One of the things that I was super interested in after the early access and open beta for Diablo 4 was exactly how much of the doom crying that people were having would actually be acted upon. You know, Blizzard had said it's a proper beta, we're going to be iterating based on feedback, and there was so much negativity online about, they're full of it, they don't mean it, the game's done, the game's ready to ship, it was just a glorified demo. Whereas the developers had been very much well, it's beta. Beta is beta. We're doing a proper beta. It's not a demo. And of course, people don't believe a thing that Blizzard said. And don't get me wrong, I understand why that is. You know, Blizzard's communication is generally not great anyway, and the reputation of the company is not in a great state. But today, 14th of April, Blizzard have put out an open beta retrospective transforming feedback into change. I haven't looked at this yet. I'm hoping it will have some interesting insights. Let us discover them together. On the weekends of March 17th and 24th, Sanctuary let out a cry for help, answered by hordes of volunteers riding on Nameless Horse and loosened Lilith's grasp on Sanctuary. Sentinel's Counter seems back, yada yada yada. Using the information, we've made a variety of fixes and updates to various systems in D4, all of which will be present in the version of the game that launches on June 6th. None of this would be possible without you lot. Dungeon layout. So this was the first point of contention I saw a lot of people have, in the sense that, the dungeons are full of backtracking and stuff, and they're really boring. So let's see what they have done. One of the most common pieces of feedback we received is that players felt they were doing a lot of backtracking within certain dungeons. I never massively agreed with this idea about backtracking anyway. The idea that there shouldn't be any backtracking basically ends up turning dungeons into rifts and greater rifts from Diablo 3, which people say they hated. But really what they want is a nice straight line to kill monsters in to get from A to B and get their loot as fast as possible. That's not really fun design. It bored people in Diablo 3, and yet people have been clamoring for it in Diablo 4 because of the backtracking nature of some of the dungeons. But Blizzard have at least taken that on board. They've optimized multiple dungeons across all zones to minimize the need for backtracking. Notice it says minimize the need. It doesn't say cut out, which is good, because I think if they cut out all backtracking, we'll have exactly the same issue that we had with rifts. Here's a list of dungeons specifically in the Fractured Peak zone which received layout updates. Caldera Gates, Defiled Catacombs. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head what these were, but I think many of them were locations which had got the pedestal mechanic. Our primary goal with the layout change was to reduce certain kinds of backtracking which detract from a player's experience. An example of this change is that players previously needed to enter side rooms to interact with structure objectives, causing them to retread the same path. So I guess that was flip levers or pick up items to put on pedestals. Now many of our structure objectives have been repositioned along main dungeon pathways, making them easier for players to reach and allowing them to readily explore the dungeon after defeating the structure. Structure objectives were the destroy totem type things. That kind of structure, I guess. Dungeon events. The chance for an event to spawn inside a dungeon has increased from 10% to 60%. Good change. I can count on one hand across all of my playtime in Diablo 4, both in the endgame beta and in both open betas, the number of actual events that spawned. I must have done upwards of 50 dungeons total across all of my time in the game so far, which amounts to about 225, 230 hours, something like that, because I was a bit busy on those beta weekends. And yeah, there were maybe a handful of events that I can remember. That's not an exact number. I don't make a note of every single time, but it wasn't many times. So a good 50% increase in event spawning will be really cool. Dungeon gameplay. To reduce the need to backtrack, small numbers of straggling monsters will seek out the player to help complete the kill all monsters objective. That was something that people complained about. People were saying, oh, can we have a cull monsters rather than you have to kill every single one? I imagine that still means that some will be missable, but that's what it says. It says reduce the need, not to cut out backtrack entirely. If you're doing such a piss poor job that you've missed a massive swathe of monsters, that's on you, frankly. When Animus is gathered, player and nearby allies will gain 10 resource and reduce all active cooldowns by 1 second. That's big. That's a big change. Because Animus orbs drop quite frequently for certain objectives. Obviously, if it's the Animus objective where you're looking for the bigger kind of elite mobs and there's maybe 4 or 5 or 6 on the entire map, it's not as impactful. Maybe that will scale. Depositing Animus channel time reduced from 3 to 0 seconds, so they've removed the channel time. Fine. Didn't really bother me particularly, but yeah, people were complaining about having to wait around. The time to rescue was reduced from 3 to 1.5 seconds, so that will make freeing people from stakes easier. All rescue objectives will now drop a health potion upon completion. I can't say that health potions have exactly been in short supply, but yeah, that keeps you topped up. While carrying the ancient statue, bloodstone, mechanical box, or stone carving, you'll receive a momentum bonus granting 25% move speed to you and nearby allies. So these 4 were the pick up and return to a pedestal objectives. And the fact that you now move faster when you're carrying them sounds good to me. Does that still mean that you're going to need to backtrack through the area? Yeah, probably. But it's going to be sped up. Pedestals have had their channel time reduced from 2 to 0 seconds, so you take these things and you put them on instantly. Returning a portable object to its pedestal now fully restores health resource potions and resets cooldowns. So that's all designed to make doing these objectives more fun. All doors will now generate a minimap ping when they are opened. That's good, because sometimes you just missed one and you had to open the map and try and figure out where you were going. All structure objectives and dungeons now have additional combat mechanics players must overcome. So no longer are they just, go and destroy these 3 skeletal constructs or these 3 totems or whatever. They've actually got combat mechanics that you've got to overcome to destroy the structures. Again, adding some variety and interest to it. While our dungeons offer a variety of objectives to complete, player feedback stated that the action of completing each objective felt tedious. We hope that providing bonuses, such as the increased mobility while carrying certain objective items, will streamline and vary the experience of completing objectives. The adjustment is merely a starting point. We intend to extend this philosophy to keys in a future update. Yeah, that all seems really sensible. I can guarantee you that there will be people that will say, oh no, this is destroying the game, blah, blah, it's making it too easy, blah, blah, we want challenge, blah, blah. Because of course there will be. But equally, there are people that moaned that all of these changes were necessary or that changes had to be done. So they're trying to please millions of people. So whatever. Class changes. General. Unlike effects like stun and freeze can be applied to elite monsters twice as long now before they become unstoppable. Good. Reviewed class skills to confirm that all classes have access to sufficient skills that remove controlling pairing effects. I actually wasn't aware that that was an issue. But again, good that they're fixing it. Many legendary powers have had updates to their effectiveness. Notice that it doesn't say nerfed or buffed. It just says that they've had updates. Barb. A flat 10% passive damage reduction has been added to the Barbarian class. Needed, in my opinion. They were squishy. Some skill tree passives have had their damage reduction effects reduced to compensate. Okay, so we've still got an overall maintained balance. Just more of it has shifted from the skill tree into passive damage. Whirlwind deals more damage, consumes more fury. I don't know whether they needed to make it consume more fury. Hopefully it's not it deals double damage and consumes double fury, because it was already difficult at times to maintain fury, but it definitely needed to do more damage in comparison to some of the other spenders. The double swing skill enhancement refunds its full fury cost when used on stunned or knocked down enemies. I cannot remember what it did before. Was it partial fury cost? Don't know. Druid. Companion skills will now deal heavily increased damage. Good, because I really like the idea of having companions as a druid, but they just didn't feel like they did anything. Ultimate skills having had their cooldowns reduced. Excellent change. Ones that were like up at 80 seconds. I can't imagine they're going to have reduced them much. Maybe by 10 to 20 seconds for the longest ones. Usability improvements have been made to maul and pulverize. Maul's their builder for Werebear. Pulverize was their spender. I'm intrigued as to what usability improvement was needed for Pulverize. I found of all of the different classes that Pulverize as an AoE spender was one of the best feeling skills in the game. So I'm not entirely sure what their usability improvement might have been, unless it's a reduction in spirit cost. But I think they'd probably have said that. Using a non-shape-shifting skill will transform a druid back into their human form. Didn't it do that already? I thought it already did that. I thought that was the point. Oh, unless there were utility skills that didn't do so. So if I use Pulverize and then use something straight after it, utility-wise, it wouldn't have. I don't know. I can't say I ever noticed that as an issue. We'll see. There are plenty of skills, passives, legendaries that that mean that once you shift out of a particular form, you still get certain benefits for a handful of seconds after doing so. So yeah. Necro. Summon minions will die more often, requiring players to utilize corpses more often. Good, because that means that it cuts down on the ridiculous amount of corpses available for corpse explosion. And it also means that you can't just guarantee that you're going to have your minions all of the time. That you've actually got to work for them. Many bonuses in the Book of the Dead have had their stats increased. I'm assuming that is for both minions, the different types of minions, and potentially the sacrifice bonuses. Be interesting to see. Damage dealt by corpse explosion has been reduced. Yeah, that makes sense. And the brightness of skeletal warriors and mages has been reduced. The blue glow on them was something that people were not liking. I didn't really mind it too much, but as you may have seen with my footage, I played with the actual glowy outlines on things. So yeah, not a big issue for me. But I get that people wanted a little bit more immersion, and the fact that the skeletons controlled by the necromancer had a bright glow, fairly bright blue glow. That being reduced is a good change. Rogue. Upgrades for subterfuge skills had their bonuses increased. Multiple passive skills have had their bonuses increased. All imbuement skills have had their cooldowns increased. So that's some fairly significant changes. Rogue was my least... In fact, Rogue is my least played character class across all of the beta experience that I've had. So what difference these make, I don't really know. I know imbuements were their fairly significant poison or shadow cooldowns. So that will make a fairly significant change to the experience, I think. But subterfuge and passive skills, yeah, I couldn't tell you the difference these make. Sorcerer, I imagine Chain Lightning is a change on here. Yes, it is. Charge Bolt's damage was increased and the mana cost to cast has decreased. Good, because it wasn't worth it. Decreased the damage of Chain Lightning and reduced its effectiveness against bosses. Good, because it was ridiculous, especially when you took the node that allowed it just to bounce back and forth if it only hit one target. Decreased the cooldown for the Incinerate skill's enchantment bonus. Didn't try Incinerate with the enchantments, so I don't actually know what the bonus is. Firewalls will now spawn underneath enemies more frequently when using its enchantment bonus. Cool. Increase the lucky hit chance for the Meteor skill's enchantment bonus. I like lucky hit as a mechanic. It just makes things more interesting. It's like the luck side of things. I'm sure people that like hard numbers all the time won't like lucky hit, but it's a proc. That's what it is. It's a proc chance. Whenever we introduce changes to our classes, it is with the goal of making both them and their skills feel impactful and powerful. Your feedback has helped us uphold this ideal. Some players have adeptly noticed that certain skills are too powerful. Yes, adeptly noticed, quite vociferously noted. One of our goals for skills is to have them be interesting to wield and interactive in terms of itemization and combat feel. We've made some changes to help in this regard, with one example being the Necro's minions. We made a change that makes them more vulnerable in combat, which will make Raising the Dead a more active component of the Necromancer's gameplay. Launch is just the first step of our class balance journey, and you can expect further updates that iterate on this pillar of D4. So yeah, changes to classes. I'm as somebody whose main's probably going to be Druid, at least for the first season. I'm intrigued by usability improvements to Pulverize, because Pulverize was one of my favourite skill on the Druid. That and Stormstrike. But yeah, whatever. UI. Fix an issue where the built-in screen reader was not reading key prompts, game options, details, and other UI text. Didn't know that was an issue, but to be fair, I didn't use screen reader, so that's not a surprise. Fix an issue where actions could not be bound to the mouse wheel. I remember people complaining about that. Glad that has been fixed. Fix an issue where evade couldn't be bound to the right analog stick on controller. Yes, actually do remember that. Remember that being an issue. Chat will now display on the left side of the screen when using the centered action bar. I'd still prefer it if we could put it where we wanted. But on the left makes more sense to me, because that's where chat always is in Diablo 3, in MMOs. Like bottom left-hand corner. Yes. Obviously, if you're using the left aligned action bar, then it'll be over to the right as before. A character's stats will be displayed by default when players click the materials and stats buttons within their inventory. Yeah, because it brought up materials first previously. I still think it's a little bit daft that they've got those two things bound to the same button, even if it does in a way reduce inventory clutter or UI clutter. But I don't think that's really a very good excuse. But at least you're more likely to want to look up stats rather than materials, I guess. I just prefer them to be separate buttons so I can just click the one I want. Because this way it could still be it's two button presses to look up for materials. Whereas if there were two separate buttons, it would just be one. Ooh. The move and interact inputs can now be mapped to one button while the primary attack input is mapped to a secondary button. Yes. I know that a lot of people like their left mouse button to only work for move and to have their primary attack be bound to a secondary button. The issue in D4 as it was in the closed beta was that you could have move. You could have force move on a button, but it wouldn't also interact. So you could use the left mouse button to move around, but you couldn't use the left mouse button to interact with something if it was just set to that. So now you can move and interact with the same button, as arguably it should have been. This will make a lot of people happy. It probably won't make a difference to me, because I'm generally quite happy to have all three of those on one. But I'm not a world-class top rank player or anything. The sans serif font used in-game has been replaced with the new serif font. For those of you who don't know what that means is, serifs are the little embellishments at the end of ligatures. So, is there an example on here? Yeah. So these, with the little kind of tails and stuff at the end, these are serif fonts, whereas these are sans serif, sans simply meaning without. So the font that everybody was complaining about in terms of, oh, it looks like a mobile game, etc., etc., that has been replaced with a slightly more detailed serif font, a font that's got slightly more embellishment. Now, the thing that I was concerned about with this was that the sans serif font I thought was probably reasonably decent for accessibility and readability. The fact that they've said it's a new serif font leads me to believe that it's not going to be Exocet everywhere, which is good, because whilst this is very much the classic Diablo font, it's really shit in terms of accessibility. I know a lot of people like it, and a lot of people were dismayed, shall we say, very vocally dismayed that it wasn't everywhere, but it's a really shitty font to read for accessibility purposes. And, you know, you can shoot the messenger if you like for this, but just because you are able to read Exocet on everything, and I am able to read Exocet on everything, doesn't mean that there aren't going to be hundreds and thousands of people that will just, like, really struggle to work with that font. So I'm hoping that this new serif font, and it'd be nice if actually they'd given us an example of it so we could see what it's like. But yes, a newer serif font I think is a decent middle ground. There was actually a serif font in the UI. It was used as headers in various character panel bits. So maybe they will have extended that across the game. I don't know. But the sans serif font was pretty much this one, or very close to it. And it's very, very readable. It's very readable. But also, arguably, it's not very Diablo-esque. So, hopefully, that will satisfy people. But I would very much have liked an example of it, just to see. Encounters. Fixed multiple issues that allowed bosses, like the Butcher, to become unresponsive. The Butcher has been re-evaluated for difficulty and will present a greater challenge in World Tiers 3 and 4. Yeah, because the Butcher was far too easy. Yeah. I don't know whether I'd noticed the bosses being unresponsive. Maybe I had in a couple of places. That's not how you spell melee. Bosses such as Short, Malnock, Venard, and others were re-evaluated for melee character difficulty. I had massive issues with Venard as a whirlwind barbarian. Right when I first encountered it. In fact, I had to come back towards the cap for the open beta with ultimates and more legendaries in order to be able to beat it, whereas I breezed it, I think, level 12 or level 13 on the Sorcerer versus level 24. It might even have been 25 on the Barbarian, and that's not great balance. So that's good. Fix an issue where vampire brutes using the Shadow Enchanter fix could chain cast Impale. I mean, Shadow Enchant is horrible anyway. It is, I believe, still the one affix that is responsible for more deaths across all of my characters and in my default experience so far than anything else. Shadow Enchant hits really, really hard. I got one shot by a Shadow Enchant Khazra, if I remember correctly, during the main quest, actually. So yeah, Shadow Enchant is a nasty one to look out for. Obviously, having Shadow Resist on your gear helps mitigate some of that, but it's still quite mean. Cellars! Increase the chance for a dungeon event to occur in cellars. I personally think a dungeon event should always occur in cellars. Cellars will now consistently reward a chest upon completion. I thought they were supposed to. I noticed that they did not. Fix an issue where sellers would prematurely be marked as complete. That happened all the time for me. Almost every single seller, in fact, would prematurely complete. So I'm glad they've changed that. Fix an issue where the guaranteed elite monster would be absent from a seller. I didn't know they were supposed to have a guaranteed elite monster, so I guess I must have fallen foul of that quite a lot as well. I still think there needs to be more variety in terms of the layout of sellers, but that's a good start. You know, making them rewarding, good, hopefully with a decent chest. Making sure that they don't finish prematurely when there's still like a wave of enemies or two to complete, yeah, good. Making sure that that spawns properly. Dungeon events, I kind of feel like they should all have dungeon events. I kind of feel like that should be the point of sellers. You know, you go in there for a single event. General QOL. Fix an issue where players could increase attack speed by move cancelling attacks early. I vaguely think I heard about this, but I never did it myself. Fix an issue where characters weren't immune and untargetable after loading into an area. The reset dungeon button has been disabled. Why? Why? Was that just for testing? I mean, I did use it in the end game beta. I didn't use it in... I don't think I used it. Yeah, no, I didn't use it in the open beta. I used it in the end game beta because a lot of dungeons obviously were broken during that, because it was essentially a very early build of the game. Fix an issue that caused Gale Valley and Seraph Rapture to have less monsters than intended until the campaign quests in those territories were completed. Interesting. Seraph Rapture was the area in the top right-hand corner of the screen that you have to do the carry the idol quest through, isn't it? Maybe. So yeah, there must be a phasing issue with that. But having more monsters is always something that I think people are going to be happy with. Next live stream update is on the 20th, so that's not too long from here. Riker's leading it by the look of it. More details about in-game offerings and elaborate on these things, I guess, as we go. I've just noticed the little scroll bar to show you progress there. Those are all good changes. Will they be enough to quiet the vocal, oh, it's not Diablo 2 faction of the community? Well, will anything. But as far as I'm concerned, somebody who doesn't really like Diablo 2 and is much more a fan of how Diablo 4 does it, and 3, I think these are good changes, and I am glad that they are following through with the whole beta means beta, not, oh, it's just a glorified demo. Whether this will be enough for people to eat their own words, well, you know what people on the internet are like. Making sure that I don't become one of those negative Nancys, I'm going to take my leave. Hopefully you've enjoyed that little bit of a read-through of these changes. I certainly found it quite interesting to read. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you played the closed beta or the open beta, what do you think of these changes? Do you think they do enough? Do you think they don't do enough? Let me know down below. Stay fabulous. Stay safe. Have a good day. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.